Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the University of Michigan Retirees Association podcast. Our podcast offers a fresh way to stay connected with our Retirees Association and the greater University of Michigan community through our many programs delivered by prominent faculty and inspirational community leaders, and by our vibrant interest groups. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the following episode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to UMRA Read's discussion of Conspiracy, Inc.
Autocracy.
Autocracy, Inc. The Dictators Who Want to Run the World. Quite a read. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the world, or maybe understand a little bit more about what's going on in the world with some of the craziness that we seem to be experiencing.
I think that was a really good introduction to it because I think it's a pretty succinct book. It's readable in part because it's very intense, but it's short. And I think she really is so knowledgeable and really, I don't know, she's just knows so much, and she has connections in, many parts of the world. I didn't know about the Poland part, though, with living there.
Did you, can you read the back of the book, Stephanie, that talks about her?
I have it. I don't have a
copy.
Oh,
you don't have it. Okay.
No, I read it from the library.
Okay. I thought you had it in your hand. And
what is it you want to hear about?
Just her Anne Applebaum's mini bio that was
here. Well, here's another page. I have the book here. It just says about the author. After 17 years as a columnist at the Washington Post, Anne Applebaum became a staff writer at The Atlantic in January of 2020. She's the author of 5 critically acclaimed and award-winning books: Twilight of Democracy, Red Famine, Iron Curtain, Between the East and West, and Gulag, which won the Pulitzer Prize. And it says, here's why. She divides her time between Poland, where her husband is a foreign minister, and Washington, D.C. So that explains it a little better. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Her husband is what?
What did I say? A foreign minister? How did they word that?
Like
her husband is a foreign minister in Poland, and then she goes to Washington, D.C. also, where I think they live more regularly, So.
Yeah, I think it's a book that it's a short book with a tremendous amount of content, I guess, content dense, and every page was powerful.
Yep. While I was reading it, I was kind of wondering, how did she get all this information? Every single line on every single page gave you examples of things, and conversations that were had, and countries that come together for this or that, and protesters, and it just seemed, obviously she had research assistants and whatnot, but what do you even Google to, get all this stuff? And it was so nicely arranged, and she had different each chapter was kind of a different category, the whole theory too of kleptocracy, and I had to look that up to make sure I understood it, and it's really like a government that doesn't make any bones about the fact they're just trying to make money, and the heck with power to the people. Let's make sure we have a lot of profit. So, gee, that sounds a little familiar nowadays, doesn't it? As far as
that word again, Susan. Say that word again.
Autocracy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, KLEP.
EPTO, yeah, I know.
TOCRACY. And then they just say it metastasizes because if someone is doing it and it sort of becomes the norm that nobody seems to be batting an eye, that the dictators are making money, they just keep making more money and they don't even hide it. And I mean, boy, if this isn't just true of what we're living through right now, I don't know, you know.
Related to kleptomania.
Yeah.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yep, exactly. Just taking everything they can and making, hey, not even apologizing for it, And then of
So
course
is this pretty much current day, or does she go back in time, some decades to other examples?
it's pretty much current. Well, let's see. I'm just glancing here. She talks a lot about Hugo Chavez in Venezuela in 1998, and then Tiananmen Square, 1989. Those are some main things, but also then after she started about Chavez, then she talked how over time things changed and he became more and more corrupt. And then it says US gave sanctions in 2017. So it felt very, very, I thought very current. She kind of, and then of course a lot about Putin and how the oil, there was an agreement about oil being funneled into Europe, and sort of, boy, isn't this great? We're working together. We're selling you something you need. But in fact, the US didn't want to be part of it because they thought then we're dependent on Russian oil. And, if they decide they don't want to supply it anymore, then what? So sometimes it's trying to make things look better than they are. And I think the other thing, and then I'll be quiet, is about democracy. A lot of these governments and a lot of the leaders who run them don't even pretend. Not only do they not pretend that they think democracy is a good thing, but they quite literally put it down and with disinformation describe bad things that were happening and attributed it to the greed of democracy or whatever. And so it really felt a lot like the other book we read about disinformation, And I guess lastly, the big thing is you may think a dictator in one country is doing a certain thing, but she just talked over and over about the collusion between the countries, between the autocracies, how they do things to facilitate everybody winning, and everybody just means the other dictators, not the people. So, and how a lot of this wouldn't even happen without China helping Russia and vice versa. So
I thought that was one of the most powerful things, is that it's like a network almost. And I remember one thing that just struck me, and I would have highlighted it in a physical copy, but it was something like we used to have all these alliances that were based on ideals, like ideals of democracy, on ideals of empowerment of people, and living a civilized life, and yada yada, good things. And now they said not ideals but deals, and what can this one do for me, and and what can I get from that one, and
how can I line my own pockets?
that's right. Exactly. And these oligarchs too, that how, and now we have, they're all over the place.
And we're allowing it to happen here.
Yeah.
yes.
Say
They did talk
more.
about that.
Say more about that, Sharon. How are we allowing it?
No one has done anything to stop Trump and his corruption.
Ah, yes, okay.
Your senator, even the Democrat, seemed very silent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, Gary Peters.
They're in the minority, though.
But they could be vocal.
Right.
and what really frightens me is, for example, if you watch any late night television, all of the late night television hosts make jokes about Trump and all of the craziness in the world. They should be instilling fear in every American. We shouldn't be joking about all of this nonsense. They should be using that as a platform to make people start to think about what we have to lose.
Sometimes
You
through
know,
kind of a satirical humor, it does. It's like, could this really be happening? Oh my God. Like John Stewart, I don't know, to some extent.
But it is happening. It isn't, I'm terrified that I will never vote again.
I'm with you.
Really? Oh, I haven't gotten that afraid yet.
It
You
all
vote again. What do you mean?
that we will never have a free and fair election, that this man currently in the White House will do everything he can to destroy by our right to elect public officers.
But if you don't vote, you've already eliminated yourself. So to me, that's not an option.
But I'm saying they will take away look at all the elections that are manipulated in other autocracies.
And that will happen. That could be a way to take away our votes, just like that judgeship in North Carolina that was recently, after how many recounts, finally it came to the judge that was the more liberal one getting the seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court, I think. But wow, that, asking for recount after recounts, trying to throw these votes out or those votes out, trying to, all those ways to discredit and make people think.
Yeah. So not voting, you've already given up.
No.
We're talking about not being given the right to ever vote again. Not that we would say, no, we're not voting.
The people as I understand it, the people in these other countries, Venezuela, they vote. But
they vote, but it doesn't matter because the ruling party will make sure that those votes any vote will end up supporting the dictator.
Well, it still hasn't been done here, I don't think. I hope.
It hasn't been done, but that's the direction we're moving. And if we don't take action, and if we don't speak to our senators and representatives, then shame on us because we're letting it happen here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably in denial or they don't know it. I was shocked what I learned in this book. I mean, you kind of wonder about it, but she really lays it out.
It does. And I mean, but think about what happened after the 2020 election. I mean, that was
ridiculous.
Every effort. And, all those criminals are from January 6th, they're all out now. And today I heard that he's thinking about pardoning the people who kidnapped or wanted to kidnap Governor Whitmer. I mean, it's crazy. And so he wants to discredit voters and say there's fraud, and
he's done that successfully. I mean, we have a felon in the White House and nobody seems to care.
Well, I think one of the things on page 78, I usually have one page or maybe two of notes. But here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. and what page the notes from. But this is on page 78. It said they tell blatant lies not to make people believe the lie, but to make people fear. It's a departure from the past. In the past, they told lies, but they tried to make the lies seem real. And to me, that's a huge distinction.
But it's happening.
Well, I know that's why she's saying that, but it's, if we say, well, this person's corrupt, and they are, well, then they say this person's corrupt, and they get a whole bunch of other people to say it too. And in their lies in the social media. And so people don't know what to believe. You know, it's pretty alarming. And I think technology has really changed that whole thing too, because I was surprised in the book to learn that both China and Russia have all kinds of media established in other countries, in Africa, all around the world, South America, and people get their news, you know, that they have their news there. And then that's another way to promote things that they want to promote in these other countries. And to me, you know, we need to know who our friends are and have a coalition too, and is what she's saying at the end. But then he's alienating Canada and Mexico, and you know, here we are, we've got two oceans separating us from a lot of this upset that's going on in the rest of the world. But then you get your neighbors, you know, upset with you and stuff. That it's all, you know, it's all so deliberate, is what's scary. And the other thing is if China and Russia, even though they don't have the same kind of autocracy, all of these are different. Iran is different from China. China is different from Russia, but they all have the same goal to, according to her, to get rid of democracy and be able to take over. And so they help each other for that means, and they don't care if each other are different. So, you know, we need to do that with our allies. And, you know, I don't know, it's a hard problem. And we've always been number one in the world, quotes, you know, in terms of influence. And I don't know what else I would say, product, everything. But that's no longer true. And she says that, I have that statement. She says that, I don't know, I've got too many pages, but she said that we're no longer the biggest, most powerful country. And especially if these two other ones combine, or, you know, at least work together. And so
Alienated Europe, and, you know, the work of, you know, post World War II, he's just shredded all of that. I mean, he threatened it terribly, and I don't think there's much respect. And as you said, or someone said about Canada and such, it's very sad, and it's very frightening. And I think this weekend, I don't know if any of you read some of the different editorials and stuff, kind of reflecting on World War II, other wars as well. And, you know, people that, you know, gave their lives. I think Heather Cox Richardson had, you know, one of her letters recently, you know, about people who literally gave their lives for, you know, what this country would be all about, and the New Deal, and the progress throughout the subsequent years. It's all being dismantled in very short order. It's just unbelievable.
Does she draw any conclusions in this book, or
Oh, yeah.
point to any techniques that might be useful, that people have used in some of these?
The last chapter, she kind of gets at that, what other countries have done. They have not won, but they have taken action. And they still have dictators. Ukraine was one that won, you know, Russia, what did they say in 2014? Russia had Ukraine, and then Ukraine went to democracy. That was successful there.
Does she talk at all about the legal systems? I mean, we think of our legal system as supposedly co-equal and protecting us from some of these things. Did these other countries have legal systems that were destroyed?
Well, I don't know, but even here, I've heard on the radio, they can say that isn't right, but they can't enforce it. They can't direct military or anything like that. So
I thought that last chapter, it wasn't as strong. I mean, it's called Democrats United, and it's really just emphasizing those who believe in democracy, need to come forward. It says, don't fight the information war, undermine it. So you almost, because at one point it said, Biden, he used to talk, he spoke to a Washington audience about overdependence on China. So, but somehow we're still very dependent on China. And now the way things are being done with these cutthroat tariffs, and who knows how that will all end up, that doesn't seem to be an answer to this either. And it just says the case needs to be made more dramatically for the democratic world's dependence on China, Russia, and other autocracies, to realize that it poses more than just an economic risk, because she said it's really a cultural, ethical, moral risk. It's just sort of summarizing it again. It wasn't like, here's the things we should do, because here we are all sitting saying, boy, we all hate this. Why isn't anybody doing anything about it? What are we doing? Is there something to do or even possible to do? They give the example of this leader in this, he came from the people in Africa. What the heck was he? I'm looking like crazy. I read this book about a month ago, so I'm forgetting. And oh boy, did he suffer for it. He was trying to lead the people against the government. And then, he was imprisoned and tortured and whatnot. So when people see that, since there doesn't seem to be the Supreme Court or any justices supporting the people and supporting the laws, people say, boy, if I get out there in the streets, am I going to end up in jail too? It's really so frightening that, and it's not like striving for the good of democracy. Now, if you put it down enough, or if there's enough stuff on the internet negatively about it, I think the thrill and the inspiration of democracy to many countries, and many people who used to support those ideals against their autocratic government are kind of losing steam about that. I don't know. I'm done.
And there's also censorship and like control of the media and all those things that have people somewhat in the dark about what's really happening. I don't know. Like I wish I had it in front of me right now myself, but I was thinking about like Navalny as one example of someone who in Russia really fought openly, and he really was a threat to Putin because he was willing to speak truth to power. And he was just summarily hauled off to prison and died there.
Yeah, because she made the point that they killed him. They don't generally kill them anymore. They just smear them. And so there's so many people that just don't know, what to believe. And so they don't kill them. But with him, she said that he was so expert at organizing and really getting the facts even, that they got rid of him. Same thing with that, I can't remember the guy's name, it starts with a P, in Saudi Arabia, who was killed in the embassy.
Oh.
They got rid of that journalist too.
Oh, Khashoggi.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. And, it's really like what people believe, even on TV, you see when Trump started cutting all those jobs and all the federal workers and whatnot. But when I was watching the news, the majority of the people who had lost jobs, who were being interviewed by, CNN or whoever, and they were saying, well, who did you vote for? And what do you think now? And every single person who had voted for Trump, even if they lost their job or whatnot, said, well, we knew this was coming and we have to do this to support the president to help our country. It's like they're drinking the Kool-Aid, somewhere along the way, they have been made to think this is a good way of doing things. And then I guess I have a somewhat unrelated, maybe not, when we were saying earlier about the comedy people at night, like Jimmy Kimmel and, Jon Stewart. There was one that I heard, Jimmy Kimmel, the night after the election, of this most recent election. And it was a very serious, very well said program. Because, it's true. If you go on and just make fun of it, before you know it, we're all laughing. And before you know it, we're losing sight of how serious this is. But he said, we all had a bad night last night. Last night meaning the night of the election. Women had a bad night. People of color had a bad night. The poor and those dependent on Medicaid had a bad night. And then he said, and even the people who voted for Trump had a bad night, only they don't know it yet. Which I thought was very insightful. They're voting for something that sounds good to them because, they feel desperate in their own situation. And yet, if they go losing their job, maybe they've had a worse night than they thought. Even though we don't hear that in the interviews of people. There's a few who say, gee, I wish I hadn't voted that way. But, I think it's just part of like what the book says. The masses, sooner or later, you can sort of twist the thinking of the masses by making it appear normal or making it appear like this is the thing we need to do.
But remember, it's television and they can edit and, they can put on, if they've got pull in that station or they owe them something, they can take all the ones that say I vote for Trump and not the others.
True. It can absolutely
taking people one at a time, whoever comes. I don't think it's just like when Kimmel does those skits. I really like his monologue because he really hits a nail on the head a lot, and he does what you said too. You do realize how bad it is, but when he does those skits, those people, they wanted to know if some silly question about, are you going to vote tomorrow? And it was already after the voting. Oh. And these people were like, yeah, I'm going to vote. Yeah, and I'm going right there today. And every one of them were like that. So I'm like, everybody on the street is not like that. So they're just putting it to make fun of that so many people don't know what's going on. And obviously, maybe don't care. So
does this mean that the autocracies are heading towards a civil war? Is that the answer? A revolution or a civil war, including our country?
No, I think civil wars are over with.
Do you?
I do. I
don't know. I'm not.
Nobody's fighting with arms. Yeah. This is a different kind of fight.
Yeah, this is more insidious.
This is for beliefs.
Fighting of values and integrity, right. And all on internet, and so much disinformation, and so much you can put pictures of people in situations where they never were. This leader in this compromising situation, and who knows? And even if it is successfully denied, once people see it, just the suggestion of anything sticks in people's minds. So that's why they say it doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if Trump says something and then later says, oh, I guess they told me wrong. Because he said it and some people heard it, that's in their minds, Well,
there are some studies that people make a psychological decision about a political candidate within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
whether that person is somebody that they can relate to, or somebody that expresses their values and ideas. And then after that, reason doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, it does matter. It matters.
It
It's,
matters, but it doesn't change people's minds.
Or their vote.
well, and that's where Kimmel came in and said they just don't know it yet.
Mhm.
Maybe people will wake up, you know, and then I don't know. But everybody's got a different way of doing things, you know, and we've always respected that. That's hard to give up. And now there's people that are affecting us that are doing things that are way different than we want and live by. And that's I think is a very hard challenge. And I always think one of the things James Carville said was, he said, early on, right after the election, he said, we don't really have to do anything because he's gonna he's gonna make it all of his mistakes on his own, you know, and people will recognize that.
I think that was really ridiculous advice on his part.
Well, he's now, I think he's more active in terms of getting, I don't know what he's doing, but anyway, I think now he recognizes things need to be done. But I mean, anybody who has watched the behavior kind of believes that he will just fall on his face, you know, just because it's how he is.
It's just he surrounded himself with so many bad actors in every dimension, from culture and the Kennedy Center to the people at Health and Human Services. He wants to get rid of FEMA. He's, education.
So you think that's not him? He's different than they are?
They're pulling the strings.
What?
They're pulling the strings of the puppet Trump. I mean, he's got a huge organization, and he'll say what they tell him to say. So it is him. But he's got some bright people who are.
So you don't think he believes all that and knows what he's doing?
I don't think he's as smart as some of the people that work for him. No, but
well, I'd agree with that. But
yeah,
but I'm not.
He's a mental case too. I mean, if you saw
he definitely has pathology.
His Memorial Day, Truth Social at 2 a.m. was something like, happy Memorial Day, everyone, including the scum Democrats, and, using language like that and elaborating on it, and, in inappropriate places, speaking at, I don't think he's got the brains to think through all this kind of stuff, that Project 2025, but he's got people that were active in developing Project 2025, and people like Stephen Miller, as his right-hand people. He can accomplish a lot when stay on the golf course.
Back for a minute to how people rise up against autocracy or have tried. The guy in Africa I was thinking of, his name was Mowariri. He's a Pentecostal pastor in Zimbabwe. And he just started as sort of a local hero. He took the flag, the national flag, put it around his neck, did a selfie sort of thing, somehow got on local TV, talking about the government, how it was letting down, the country, etc. And people got all excited and behind him and whatnot. And then finally, because he was so popular, then they just, like when we said before, it's not so much picking up guns anymore, but it's smear campaigns and it's anything you want to put on the internet or on news. And so eventually they tried to portray him as fake, inauthentic, manipulated by outsiders, a traitor, not a patriot. And then they were careful about the words that they used too, instead of democracy and justice. When they talked about him, they always got the words treason and foreign money in there. Well, if you're accused of being paid with foreign money for something or other, no one has to prove it. You just say it and people all of a sudden believe it, oh my gosh. So, and then he finally, after he suffered a lot, then he just finally gave up, so, and the problem too is if you look at her last chapter where she talks about Democrats, come together, who's the leader? Who's the most likely leader? I was sort of thinking about that. Is there a rising star who is charismatic enough and whatnot
Buttigieg?
to, who?
Buttigieg?
I don't
didn't
Personally, I
understand.
don't think he has the charisma, but
No.
that's just me. Maybe you all think so.
Oh, I didn't hear who she said.
Pete Buttigieg,
Yeah.
Buttigieg.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
Buttigieg.
former Secretary of Transportation.
Transportation, right,
That's right.
right. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Cory Booker has done as much as anyone.
That's
Yes.
true. I like him a lot too.
I do. I do.
What did he
And
speak? 25 hours on
Mhm.
the floor?
Amazing.
Something like that.
And he spoke the whole time. He didn't read,
Uh-uh,
Phoenix and Ham and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But someone already said this, but I do think that I wanted more from the last chapter.
Mhm.
And maybe that's my naivete. But I wanted some direction. I wanted something concrete.
Yeah.
And I thought that her last chapter, as powerful as the rest of the book was, I thought her last chapter was just a little soft.
Yeah.
He
Great.
published it in 2024, which is, I mean, still, but she wasn't aware of what has happened since then. But I still agree with all you, Matt.
Well, it was a powerful book.
I have
So
to
I
say,
would thinking about Hillary and I don't know. I don't hear from her. We don't hear much from her, but I always felt that she, would have been good president.
That is.
But
Well, the machine took her down.
yeah, lies.
I mean, that was the classic example of what Applebaum was saying in her,
Yes,
in her book.
it's exactly true.
Because when you think about how they used to say she misused the email and whatnot, and she should have not had it on private email. And now that's like peanuts compared to what's going on in the government. No one would ever get all up in arms about that anymore because it's so minuscule compared to the bigger issues now. But back then, it was sort of like this ethical argument, was this not handled well for security? Well, there's a whole lot of other security issues we have now. But,
And far greater impact on the security breaches that have occurred recently than anything in the Hillary Gate nonsense.
yeah.
But they had the machine in place and they put it into action and it worked.
Pete Hegseth is getting kind of a rocky ride because of his mistakes with communication. I think he's going to escape okay, but
Yeah, I don't think they'll protect him.
yeah.
He's so unqualified, and there you
But
go.
he's the perfect puppet. And that's all they have to do is have these people in place to do their bidding.
And I think they also talked about, or she talked about, like wedge issues that we're used to hearing about, like outright lies about LGBTQ people, that, they're taking children from families with a mother and father, and kidnapping and giving them to, gay couples or whatever. I mean, crazy stuff was, put out there in Russia. And really, I mean, to think that, like, they perpetrate things in the United States, like that Democrats are pedophiles, and this crazy stuff that some people are actually swallowing, and then they feel compelled to go with the Republican side of things. However, they are handling the country, and they're going after these other issues that, what about the men that dress up as women?
Transvestite.
No, what?
Transvestites.
Yeah, but they sing and all that, and do shows.
Drag, yeah,
Drag
shows,
performers.
drag shows. I'm sorry. That
Yeah.
I mean, they have made this gigantic deal about drag shows, like it is the worst possible thing, and to eradicate that, and I mean, they have all these things about bathrooms and sports and whatever to and then they did some of that in Russia and other places. It's that you know have these kinds of governments, or whatever you call it.
Does she talk a lot about the media and social media? Because I mean, we read the newspapers that we read, other people read the newspapers that they read, and people don't read the other versions.
Well, that's what I said, that the two, China and Russia, have numerous television stations. In some countries, they're the only one available. They've spent the money to put it in, and now they just keep with their news. That is people's news.
I mean, they
Radio station, television, and also social media. But a lot of people's news is put there by those countries.
Yeah.
And in their languages, and in other languages too, I suppose, but it's,
well, I'm thinking now again about the media. Now we can see things, how even the media that I read, and maybe you read, takes things and never gives an explanation when they're shown to be wrong. Some of them are, even the New York Times is sensationalist. Like they had these things recently. I'm thinking of the wars in Ukraine and in Israel and Gaza. One time they had this whole thing about how some hospital had been hit, and 200 people had been killed in Gaza. Then it turned out, although it wasn't made a headline, that in fact it was a missile that was done by Islamic Jihad and had fallen by mistake on their own hospital area. And it wasn't even the hospital, it was the parking lot. And like 10 people had died. So, but that was front page news in the New York Times, but they never put front page news of the actual explanation. They quickly accept whatever it is. Now, lately, it was something that 48,000 children in Gaza were going to die. And in 2 days, and somebody from the UN said that. And then it turns out that the person had misread or misquoted that somebody had said that over the next year, 48,000 children might be at risk of malnutrition. And because there were only 2 days left in that year, this person from the UN said 48,000 children may die in 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
And then when that was all explained, it never, it never got back. So the thing is, the media somehow, I don't know, I'm just concerned about where people are getting the information, what information we're getting, and how much the media is twisting this. And that's our media, the media that we would think is rational. So then what can we expect from the media of like the Daily News or whatever, these other newspapers that print falsehoods, not misinterpretation? So
you haven't read the book, have you?
No.
It's evident, because I mean it. Because when you read that book, you get your eyes opened up really wide.
About the media?
About everything. And the thing is, I'm asking you, who's explaining all of this? Because a lot of times what happens when the truth is there, the other people, the anarchists or whatever, they come in and say, oh no, it's this. And they say the opposite. And so people don't know what to believe. And that could have been happening in the case you're talking about too. Maybe it was bad, and maybe they're going, oh, no, and everybody that doesn't know what to believe. And that's how they work. So I'd be real careful about who you're blaming. I don't know.
Well, I'm blaming the media because I just see
who's
that
the media?
they run with the sensational thing, and they never follow it up when they get more accurate information.
But where did the accurate
good
information
media
come from?
That's what the media we consider responsible. So heaven knows what's happening in the media that are irresponsible, if this is happening in the media that is responsible.
No, you're not getting what I'm saying. Where did you get the information that wasn't true?
From media.
What media? Social media?
No, I can't remember. I think it's there. I could look it up for you. But other UN people made the comments that this was a misinterpretation. That this that's
what they do.
What?
It's typical of what they do.
What? Who does?
What the anarchists do? How they use the press and the media. It's in the book. That's how she describes it. And I mean, if we didn't have our journalists here and people, what would we have?
But that's what I'm saying.
I think you're challenging.
That's my point.
You're challenging the what we think of as legitimate media. And I'm agreeing with Monica. You just don't know. You expect the responsible media to make their journalism accurate, fair, accurate, unbiased. And you're saying that, that just sounds so out of line with what we expect from legitimate journalism. I don't have an answer for you, but I hear your point.
I think that Trump exerts great pressure. I mean, just think about Trump to Bezos to the Washington Post, and how many journalists have left the Washington Post because they can't publish the truth. Scott Pelley gave a powerful
commencement.
Commencement address. If you Google it, he really, let it all out in terms of, what's happening with, the guy from 60 Minutes who had it for almost 30 years. would not compromise his integrity, to mollify or whatever, Trump and, what he wants out there. So, I think it's frightening right now, and how New York Times even, which I shouldn't say even, but because they kind of sane wash Trump's going on, and some of his crazy talk and his posts and everything, and they just don't even bring it up. I mean, it's crazy. And yet, with Biden, and Biden made some really, unfortunate, errors, and but he was repeatedly called out. But they don't do that with Trump enough, at least. I stopped getting Washington Post a long time ago, but I still try with the New York Times. But I think Substack has an increasing number of journalists that, two from like the Washington Post, have started this, The Contrarian. That's one I'd recommend. And Robert Reich, well, he wasn't with one of the journals. Ann Telenas, different ones. And I think, I get a lot of news from those Substack columnists. Robert Reich is another one was an economist. And so I'm wandering a little bit, but I do think that the media has failed us.
I guess I wonder about I wonder about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wonder about if something's reported that all these kids are starving, and then we know that all of the aid's been stopped for quite a long time. And more is being stopped, and it's trying to be negotiated, and then they'll say, okay, we'll do it. And then you find out a week later that, well, something happened, it didn't happen. Then when I hear a second report saying, oh, these kids aren't starving, and they're not going to be starving for another year, to me, I would have to think twice about that second report.
That's not what they reported. They reported that the person who made that statement was a UN official, and that person had misunderstood the initial statement, because this was at the end of that year. A year ago, somebody from the UN said there was a risk, not a certainty, but there was a risk that 56,000 or whatever it is, infants or children would be I guess it's really children, not infants, because he said it was 56,000 infants. Somebody from some agency, that follows these things, said a year ago that children under 5 might be at risk of malnourishment over the year. Well, the year was almost over. There was 2 days left to the end of the year. So this UN person misunderstood that whole thing and said in 2 days, 56,000 infants may be starving. And then the UN officials had to come in and say, no, that's not what was said in this initial statement. So anyway, I'm just saying that, this was all plastered. The same thing happened a year ago. I don't know if you remember, but there was polio in Gaza was starting, and they had to have 2 inoculations. And so I think Israel was sending in polio vaccine, and other countries were sending in polio vaccine. But then they said because of the chaos there, that the children were not going to be able to get their second vaccine. Well, this was in the New York Times. Has there been a polio epidemic in the last year? And so forth. So it's like the New York Times has become sensationalist. They don't wait and check their facts anymore. And if the New York Times is doing this, can imagine what the other newspapers are doing. I don't know. You can't trust the New York Times. Who can you trust?
Christian Science Monitor.
What?
The Christian Science Monitor.
The Christian Science Monitor.
How about the Guardian? It's not bad. Substack, different Substack columns.
Oh, that's interesting about Substack.
I mean, I think there's many really good ones on there. I get a lot of them, I'll admit, but it's because I'm having trouble with mainstream media, and these people used to be in it. Jen Rubin and Norm Eisen. Just
Well, that's all.
So what
the
is happening? What
He's
is
saying
happening?
they're winning, and apparently they are, because we're losing our good people.
who? What?
The media, all the people who are leaving journalism and not putting out their stories. Everybody's so afraid and or intimidated, or they're pissed off. But either way, they're leaving. And if you don't vote, if you aren't going to stay and do something, then you've given up.
Well, do you think?
And so the whole country will just go down the tubes.
But what about the people that forge out on their own on Substack?
Well, I don't know them, and I'm not reading that because I don't get any information from them.
I mean,
and I don't know how to find that. So,
well, sign up for Heather Cox Richardson, who's a renowned educator and historian, and she sets so much in historical context. It's Letters from an American. I've read her for several years now. I know that you would like it, Corinne. I'm going to send you the link to it. I mean, she's fantastic. And Robert,
how many people like me are out there that are going to find one little columnist?
No,
it's going to happen.
Well,
just let me. The thing is, I subscribe to a newspaper that I think is good, and I think that our press should be supported by all of us. I meet with a bunch of ladies too, and one of the things that one person is doing is she's subscribing to try to support the press, the good press. And
Good idea.
That's one of the things that we can do.
But how are you judging that? What is your criteria for good press?
Well,
is the Pulitzer Prize Award not something to pay attention to?
Facts, reporting it accurately, and if a mistake is being made, to acknowledge that, which it sounds like it was done. And so, people aren't perfect, but you have to acknowledge when you make a mistake, and everybody does make a mistake.
Not me.
Yes, you too.
But well, certainly
I think I don't know. I subscribe to several. I read my local paper too. I want to know what's going on, and I can get some facts from Jimmy Kimmel, but and the other TV shows and everything else. But I like reading the newspaper. I read a lot all day, and it's important that I think journalists are some of our most important people around, and if they're the good ones, and I think a lot of them are good. So I don't know.
So this book certainly has generated a lot of interesting commentary.
Yeah. Well, and everybody has different viewpoints too. I mean, we live in a country where your own viewpoint is considered important. And Monica has hers. You have yours, I have mine. But I think the thing that has to happen is that if you all have the same values and you want the same kind of things and the same kind of country, then you've got to find the common ground.
If only.
Yeah, right.
Well, I encourage everyone to put their congresspeople on speed dial, and every week give them a call about some important matter, because they tally those calls. They want to know what's on people's mind. And I think that's probably one of the most effective ways that we can reach out in this day and age.
And I agree, I do that too, and I think that's very effective.
Do you do that even for people who have the same point of view that you have?
Well, I don't know. I only have mine. And if other people want to talk to their congressman, they can.
Monica, I live in Florida.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe for you it makes a difference. For me, I've got great people here.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no, though, Monica. I mean, Gary Peters does some great things for the state, but, he hasn't spoken up about what's happening in this country. He doesn't even refer to it mildly in his newsletters. He just doesn't talk about it at all. And so, yeah, I'm glad he's working on Great Lakes or something for the VA, and I give him credit for it.
Right.
But I do not think that, he is out there at all. And I don't get it really, since he's, not running again, and he could use his voice. He used it to elect a lot of Democrats to the Senate. I don't get it with him. And so, yeah, I write to him, but I've also, I get all the email from Indivisible, and I go to a lot of protests. I do. And, but, they say, do thank the congressmen that are doing things. Write to them. Say thank you for what you did.
Like Debbie. We have Debbie.
We have Debbie.
She's wonderful.
Mhm.
Well,
She's fantastic. I mean, she's been at a number of demonstrations that I was at recently in Dexter, and one at City Hall. The
She
one
hits
where
them all, downriver, out here in
She's
Belleville,
passionate.
she's everywhere. Yeah.
she wears her red pantsuit and she's out there really saying it like it is. And I think it's some risk to herself. But yeah.
Yeah, she's really, really good. And her website, I mean, it's real easy to respond to your legislators or write the letters, because she has all that all in there. That makes it so easy for you. She's got your legislators, no matter where you are in the state, and you just have to push the buttons and do it.
If you compare her newsletters to Gary Peters, you'll just see such a difference in terms of responsiveness and activism.
I haven't seen any other legislator that has newsletters like hers.
Right.
I've been following them a long time. So she's really good. But this book, I mean,
Does it give any hope, that book?
well, you tell us.
Yeah, you
read it.
Tell us.
Yeah.
Terrifying. I think it's terrifying. And I actually think that we all need to be terrified right now, and not to be immobilized by it, but
Right.
to see what we can do, like each of us in our,
Yeah.
So now we've been
What
informed.
the
We can't
dictators
say we didn't know.
want is for you to be fearful, or for you to give up hope. I think what she says is they expect you to lose hope, and so you just succumb.
I mean, I had lunch with a friend, and she said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "Well, I go to a lot of demonstrations when, when there's runaround one somewhere around here, I'll go to, Tesla or to the indivisible ones, or there was one big one at the VA." And she goes, "Yeah, but what good does that do?" And, I don't know. I think that's like resignation in my mind, because
And that's what they hope for. I think that was her message. You give up.
That's
And,
right.
and you get bulldozed over.
And I think in this day and age, it's sort of important for perhaps people in other countries, if we're all just sitting here like little sheep, agreeing with all this crazy stuff going on, versus if there are big demonstrations, for different topics that we're disgusted with from the administration, at least it's visible that not every single person is following without thinking. So I think and hope that that's worth it. I mean, even when he was elected the first time, the very next day, what impressed me, or maybe it was 2 days later, all the women, protested against Trump, including internationally. That's what boggled my mind, that France and, every place was having, South America, where women were protesting against that. I thought, wow, to be so attuned
I
to
still have my
how badly
pussy hat.
things could go. What?
I still have my pussy hat.
Pussy hat? There you go.
All right. Well, our next opportunity is coming up on No Kings protest on, is it June 14th, I think. It's the day that, Trump is having his special parade.
Oh, yeah.
Across the country, there will be, protests, really. And you just go to indivisible.com. They have a map and you can find your places where there will be one. And I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah. But I would.
Good for you. You're doing it for those of us who don't go. Thank you. Because you're absolutely right. One just has to keep showing that one is not giving in.
Right.
So our book next month, I'm segueing.
Yeah.
Our book next month will be a bit different.
Uh-huh.
We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. Do you remember the Thursday Murder Club author?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it will be a bit on the light side.
Yes. Which is good.
Be nice.
We're here for variety.
I have to get into it. I tried to start it and I don't know, like I ended up jumping over to the next month. So I'm in the midst of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which I'm just enchanted with. And I know I have to go back to We Solve Murders and I'm going to make myself do it. But the next month after that is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's very cool.
I read that as a teenager.
Yeah.
Great. It's
A
just
long time ago.
lovely. Oh my God.
But I have to find my list. I can't find my book list.
I'll send it to you, Monica.
Okay.
And it's on the website, Monica, under interest groups.
Okay.
So you can
The whole list or just the next one?
No, the whole list.
Whole list.
It's a good list this year.
I ran out of room in the newsletter to publish it, but I will try to do it next month. I think it's nice to have at least
Yeah.
once, because we've got quite an interesting list.
Right.
Sally, you've been kind of quiet today. Did we miss you or are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm with you guys on your comments on the book. And I'm looking forward to A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I bought We Solve Murders when it came out.
Did you?
And it was a little disappointing to me. Other people may really like it. Compared to the Thursday Murder Club books, it was a slog. It was a little bit of a slog. So, but as I say, that could just be me.
Well, I think if you read some of the reviews, I think other people have felt we miss our characters from the Thursday Murder Club.
Definitely. But yeah, that's me.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to offer? Then I think I will stop our recording.
I do want to offer something. I encourage people also to read like On Freedom by Timothy Snyder. That's a wonderful book. And you probably have seen him. He's a Yale professor. Now I think moved to Canada, but he still considers himself very much an American. But he is extremely disturbed at all that's happening. And I think On Tyranny and On Freedom are his two books.
Okay, thanks. Good recommendation.
Thank you.
And if you want to send that name of that journalist, that I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been reading Heather Cox Richardson for a number of years, and you won't be disappointed.
No.
She really
I
puts
mean,
things in perspective.
yeah, the academic side of you will like it, the citizen side of it, every side of you.
Yeah,
I really think you will. You'll have to tell me.
she's good.
I am impressed with so many journalists, so thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this latest episode by the University of Michigan Retirees Association. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to learn more about us, visit us on the web at umra.hr.umich.edu and subscribe to this podcast. Thank you again, see you next time, and always, go blue.